Brought to you by Penguin.
The Lock-In by Phoebe Luckhurst. Read by Remmie Milner. Chapter 1. Ellen. Ellen was a bit rusty on what their tenancy agreement said about flooding the entire ground floor of their house, but she suspected that Elias, the balding, barrel-chested sociopath who owned their property in Lewisham, would have prepared for the eventuality. This would most likely involve damages being pillaged from their security deposit. The prospect of explaining the flooding to him was about as appealing as walking into moving traffic. There was never any arguing with Elias. True, Ellen had never known a sympathetic London landlord, but Elias was a tyrant. He lacked any empathy or humanity, and overreacted at the slightest provocation. His emails were always abrasive and usually written predominantly in caps lock. Last month, when Ellen's housemate Alexa emailed to ask whether there was a mop in the house, he responded by calling her a freeloading C***T. Then there was the Friday evening before a bank holiday weekend, when the dodgy flush had broken on their only loo. When they asked for Elias's help with a handyman, he balked at paying the higher call-out fee and suggested they flush it with a bucket until Tuesday. He also had a habit of letting himself in without warning, which was, Ellen was fairly sure, a violation of the terms of their lease. They'd hear the grind of his keys in the door and, quick as a flash, assemble in her room, which was technically the living room, for a crisis meeting to determine the party line on when they'd last hoovered the stairs. Elias always found something to complain about, be it the state of the lawn or a lingering smell in the kitchen. He didn't like Chinese food. On his last visit, his eyes were narrowed and searching, as if expecting to find a chow mein sequestered away in a cupboard. He once called to warn them that if they didn't polish the kitchen surfaces once a month, he'd have their bollocks in a vice. In person, he often eyeballed the docile Jack when he made threats, especially ones about bollocks, fingering his keys. There were 2 key rings on the chain, a blue bottle opener bearing the name of a casino, and a small plastic busty pin-up girl in a Baywatch red swimsuit. Ellen had lived at 49 Rokeby Close for 3 years now, which she occasionally noted sadly, meant she'd known Elias longer than her longest relationship had lasted. The 3 of them did not know what Elias had done to afford this roomy, if rather shabby house on a nice road in New Cross, southeast London, not to mention his 3 other properties in the surrounding area. He had something of the used car salesman about him. It was the brown slip-on shoes and the shiny grey suits Alexa had once said authoritatively. Google conjured nothing. Sometimes Elias would bring his lacquered wife, Cynthia, with him on impromptu house inspections, and she would stand wordlessly, drumming her blue shellacked nails along the kitchen counter. Or sit at the MDF table with the wobbly leg, seemingly not listening as he complained that the grass hadn't been mown this spring. The grass was a real fixation. Ellen would never have pegged him for a gardener. On one visit, Cynthia put her iPhone on the table. When the screen lit up, Ellen noticed that the background was a picture of a man in Speedos emerging from the sea, Bond style. The man was not Elias. Cynthia never said a word to any of them, but she had once forwarded them all an email from a community group calling for a boycott of a local primary school which had been teaching its pupils about LGBTQ+ relationships. Ellen had shared the email on Instagram. #TFW, your landlord is a homophobe, ? Alexa had sent a curt response requesting that Cynthia refrain from sending them emails of this nature in future. Jack and Ellen sitting beside her and nodding wordlessly while she composed the message. Cynthia had replied a few days later, CCing them all, stating that while they lived under her roof, she would send them whatever
Sample complete. Ready to continue?